What's up, mamas? Thanks so much for being here with us. Today, for this segment, we have Michelle Mansfield, who is an author, health coach, and a mom. She's going to be talking to us about how to help new moms adjusting to motherhood. Michelle, thank you so much for being here with us.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me. And hello, everyone. And thanks for joining. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, and adjusting to new motherhood ain't no joke. It's a really, really hard thing to do. And so I feel like everything you're about to tell us is something that's gonna be so beneficial. So what inspired you originally to start helping new moms through that phase of life?
Well, I'm a health coach. I'm not actively practicing one-on-one anymore, but I've been a health coach since Brooklyn, when I was pregnant with her. It was kind of a long story how that happened, but I originally worked with women and got certified in areas of prenatal, fertility, prenatal, and postpartum wellness. And it was wonderful. And I found myself a lot of times, especially with women that had already had children, a lot of women would be in my office in tears, always at the end. It would end up in tears, and we would get off the food topics and like the movement topics and all of that. And it would be a lot of like this stress and just like letting all of this stress and frustration and feelings out, where I sat there wondering, like, do they have any outlet other than me? And I would ask them and they're like, oh no, my partner or husband, I don't want to bother them with that. Or my friends never talk about this stuff. My mom never talked about it. And back then I didn't, like, a light bulb didn't go off right away. But through the years of coaching women, working with groups, one-on-one, whatever, I just noticed that the emotional side of adjusting was coming up. And I started following people on Instagram that were talking about this stuff, reading some books where all of a sudden things started coming out in me, like almost like I blacked out. And I'm like, wait, that's how I felt. I didn't know anyone felt this way. I kind of just pushed things under a rug, didn't tell my husband, didn't tell my mom, who I'm very close with, didn't tell my best friends, who I told a lot of things to. And the more I read, learned, listened, I started to acknowledge things just started coming up. They were comfortable coming out. And that's where I kind of like started saying, like, I think no one's talking about this stuff. Yeah. And why? And I even go back, I found I was going through old postcards. Like I'm a little old school sometimes with marketing, and I would make for local events, I would make really cool postcards and give them out at other events and things for like talks that I would do. And I recently found this one about the 4th trimester that I did. And it's all this stuff about like the feelings you're having adjusting, things that you don't want to talk about, your doctor, it's not on your doctor's checklist. It's not the dramatic, like postpartum feelings, which are still, I respect, but I wasn't having super dramatic postpartum feelings. I could probably have been diagnosed with postpartum depression looking back, but I wasn't having anything on that high scale. But it wasn't the baby blues. It was that middle ground that I felt like no one talks about. And it's kind of like the world of social media or anything entertainment wise. If it's not super exciting or super this, it's like the middle ground is known as like boring or not marketable. So totally. I was telling my husband that I was like, it's not exciting to tell people that you're bored, or maybe you think that it's complaining. It's not like you need a doctor's help. Maybe you do at times, but it's like these common feelings that a lot of women have. And the more I acknowledged and started talking about them myself to people, like, hey, did you ever feel this way? And people would be like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why aren't we like talking about this? So it's was like a ripple effect. It happened very organically. And here I am today, just with more passion and just a more active voice, with it.
Oh, that is so relatable, I think, to so many people. And for me, I have a 1-month-old right now and an almost 2-year-old. And I feel like everything you said, just right in the middle, that's exactly how, especially with my first son, it's exactly how I felt. And it's hard to express, because I think it does sound like complaining. I feel like that was kind of what I felt like. Oh, I don't want to complain. This is just how it is. You just do it. And so what are some of those feelings though, exactly that you're talking about?
All right, let's do it. So, the feelings, I'm going through things that I've been writing about, shame, doubting what you did. There were times I'd be, I remember one time driving from Bye Bye Baby, getting diapers, like 10 minutes from my house. And my husband is amazing, but I was nursing. And this was like early on where she was like, I felt like every 10 minutes, like, and you get those texts like, she is crying, she is hungry, I think. She wasn't taking a bottle, of course. And I'm sitting there like rushing home, like sweating. And I'm like, I can't. And I'm at like a stop sign or a light. And I'm like, I can't even get freaking diapers without, and I'm like talking out loud without like it in my face. I'm like, what did I do with my life? Like, what did I do? So that like, regret. I had feelings with my husband getting back to his normal life after a week. So, those relationship challenges that go beyond the bedroom, it's like you go to the doctor and they're like, all right, 6 weeks, you're free to have sex. You're all good. You're healed up nicely. And it's like, wait, I think it kind of goes beyond me just being healed physically. There's so many other things. I was very insecure about my life because I left my career. It would have been impossible to keep my career, unfortunately, or else I would never have seen her. So that, I had a lot of guilt about a lot of things, which I think I know stems from just my life in general, how I am. Loneliness. I was super isolated and lonely. Not only was it winter, February was when she was born, but, there was a huge flu outbreak and everyone was panicking about the flu. I guess women right now are going through that with the pandemic.
Right.
So I was afraid to take her out. So I sat on a leather brown couch, like all freaking day and night, like nursing and watching the Golden Girls, like all the time. I was like, what, and I just, after the visits are done, it's like everyone goes back to their normal lives. My friendships changed a lot and they still are. So I think that's a huge thing with motherhood is, understanding how friendships can change and maybe go away forever, unfortunately, and that it's okay. I had a lot of just nostalgia about my past life. I miss the freedom, doing whatever I wanted to do, whenever I wanted to do it, and so those are just 12. And there's many more, it's just a tornado of things going on in your head as you're trying to keep a human alive on top of it,
right?
The pressures of that.
I literally feel like you just explained my life as you were talking about. Yes, everything you said. How do you get moms to share their feelings about this kind of stuff? Because some people, it's hard to get them to open up. How do you get them to share their feelings?
I think that right now it took a while. Obviously, it took me four years, when Brooklyn turned 4, not on the date, but around that age, right. Where my gift, I believe, is my voice, my vulnerability, and my authenticity. I think the way like I was saying earlier, the way I became comfortable with simply acknowledging the feelings. I didn't tell anyone yet, but simply within myself, acknowledging the feelings was brought about because of other women being generous and vulnerable and not putting on this face that it's a weakness to share your struggles. I think your struggles, we actually did a journal entry, my daughter and I, for homeschooling yesterday. Your struggles are blessings that make you stronger. So I think that takes time to learn, though. And I think it takes time seeing other women doing it to feel that it's okay for you to unleash that as well. My honesty as well. I'm going to be as honest as possible with women I speak with, or with my writing or anything, conversations with women on the street, here with you. Yeah. And just being honest and not being afraid of being judged, because so many women don't judge me. They're, if anything, they're exactly what you just did, of saying like, oh my gosh, I feel the same. And even if they don't, I've had a lot of, sympathy, or like, oh, I didn't feel that way, but I'm sorry that you did. Or, I've had a lot of great women around me. So I want to give women the permission to honor and acknowledge the feelings, eventually start talking about them with someone they trust, even if it's a stranger like me. Sometimes that's easier, in my
Yep, it's true.
opinion. And then that confidence building where they can share with multiple women, whether it's at a mom's group, a MOPS group, whether they're at, just casually at a coffee shop and overhear something. And then that ripple effect, like what happened with me, continues, and we normalize these feelings.
You mentioned the impact of good women around you and in your life. What is the impact of having either friends or family, but a group of moms around you that you can relate to?
Uh, well, I believe, and this is the challenge with the friendship subject here.
Yeah.
I think we've all had the friends that we've had out of convenience, out of whatever situation or what environment you're in at the time. So maybe a high school friend or a college, sorority sister. Friendships that have been enclosed within walls of something. And they've been convenient friends because maybe it's your roommate, your first roommate when you graduate from school and you live together. But when life gets complicated and you kind of separate and start creating your families, or, whatever you start doing on your own, how do you still like stay together? Do these friendships last? And do these friendships fulfill you in the ways that they did? Or have you changed as well, with motherhood? Because I don't know. I would love to talk to the woman who hasn't changed because of motherhood, even in the slightest bit. But my challenges with my, friendships around me and having to let go of some is it's just, I feel like I'm doing more work than I've ever done with any relationship, whether I'm the one always putting in the effort, or I'm the one making plans, or they're not calling me, or just sometimes it's too hard and it's different. And sometimes you can't even explain when a relationship changes. It's just maybe a lull in the relationship. Maybe you have a friend that has older children and they're jetting off to soccer games and all this, and they're so busy, and you're not there yet. You've got a newborn, you're just in a different world, and you're not connecting. But maybe someday you will again, and you'll know when that, time is right. But I believe that when we honor our self-worth and we heal from within, and that the pillars are seriously like acknowledging these feelings, talking about them, and growing, and with these pillars guiding to that self-worth, you're going to attract the right people. And when you talk and you're authentic and you're vulnerable, that vulnerability is so huge. Nothing's worse than like, you're with someone and you're talking about all this stuff. You're in the thick of this and that. And they're like, well, I just never experienced that. And you're like, okay, well, even if you haven't, could you just like not make me feel like,
I'm crazy.
Know, like I'm crazy, or like, oh, well, that's never happened to me. And how are you, and some people I understand. And I have people in my life that I've had to kind of just put on the wayside that don't feel comfortable being vulnerable. And and therefore, for some reason, I'm just not connecting with them. Probably because I'm being overly vulnerable. Maybe they're having a hard time with that. But I think when you're authentic, when you're real and honest, you attract, not only is your self-worth increasing and your self-esteem and your confidence, but then you're attracting the right people that will help you through that stage in life. And they may be there only for a season, and that's okay. But you'll have some good ones that'll stick around through all of those seasons. And you got to trust that mommy gut instinct. I don't know about you, Lauren, but like when I meet someone now, and I don't know if this comes with age or with clarity, I get this like click. and it's almost immediate.
Hmm.
When they start talking and you're talking, and within like 5 minutes, you're like, nice, but I'm not feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you meet someone and you get this like, yes. And it's rare. It's rare. And you don't have to
Totally.
have 30 friends like we did in college or high school. You know,
Right.
if you have one or two, oh my gosh, you're so blessed.
Yeah.
Because nothing's worse than being lonely in motherhood. And so you got to just trust that gut when you meet people. When you go to a mommy group, my problem that I had is that I felt like I had to be best friends with everyone. I felt like I had to recreate all these friendships because my friendships that I had were all in different stages. I had Brooklyn later in life. So they were
Mm-hmm.
all back to work and kids were in elementary school and all these things. And I lived far, like about an hour from them. So it was hard to see them. And so I felt like I had to recreate all these friendships. And I remember that anxiety of feeling like everyone had to be my best friend. And my husband being like, they don't. And, you know, that took some time. But that's a long explanation for that. And it's very challenging. Maybe it's my next book because it was the hardest chapter for me to write myself, was the friendship one. A lot of tears and a lot of like bringing stuff up.
And I really love that, and love that you brought it up, because as a mom, your time is very precious as it is. And so, and it's not that you can't be kind to everybody and
Yeah.
loving, but you do not have time for everyone. You don't. And so you do have to find those relationships that are nourishing and that matter and that last. And I love that you said it can be different in different stages, and that's okay. I think that's hard for a lot of people to grasp. And honestly, I had kids later on in life too. I would meet up with some of my old friends and they had several kids. I was the person they probably wanted to drop because they were talking about all their kids. And I was like, I am not interested in this, because I was in the midst of my career and I'm like, I don't want to talk about your kids.
Yeah.
But now I'm a mom, I get it, that is why they talked about their kids all the time, because it consumes you. And so I love that you brought up friendships. I think that's so important. What are some other tools and tactics that you could give to new moms that are experiencing these feelings right now?
I mean, I don't unfortunately have a magical potion to make everything go away, because you know what I tell mothers and how I'm writing this book right now is acknowledging that we're all different. We all have different stories of what made even if we have similar feelings like boredom, guilt, resentment, there's all these different stories that made us feel this way. So for, you know, a quick example with like my mom guilt, I've had guilt my whole life. I had guilt when I was a child and I didn't play with a stuffed animal enough. So of course, if I am away from my daughter for an hour, that guilt comes back. And I know it's from my unique past, and I'm going to be still figuring that out, you know, for years to come. That's what therapy's for, I guess. Right.
Right.
But I acknowledge that every mother has a different story, and every mother doesn't, or not every mother, but a lot of mothers just don't want someone to tell them what to do. I have read a lot of mom books, I'll just call them. And, you know, in doing my research before this even, and although I appreciated the advice, I think what has helped me the most is just storytelling, people telling their stories. And me then becoming, like I've said earlier, comfortable with acknowledging and finding my own unique path. So I want women to do that as well, because they can. It's work, but with someone like me or anyone out there, any friend that is a great friend, just like talking about things will help you connect with your own solutions. And, you know, I just, you know, all these self-help books that are out there, it can be so overwhelming for these moms to have even more solutions put at them. With friendships, I could sit there and say, make effort and once a week, spend an hour, you know, reaching out to a friend. But when you're like, you're exhausted, you're just emotionally drained, sometimes that may not work for you. And I don't want to sit there and tell women what to do. I just want to give them permission to unleash things and start getting things, out there, because I think that's the best gift that you can give someone, is that permission to be authentic, the permission to be yourself, to never apologize, for who you are, and how you feel, and, the permission to be vulnerable. And it's not a weakness. If anything, it's such a strength, and it'll get you to such an amazing, unique place for you. Your motherhood is unique to you. My motherhood, your motherhood, and anyone that's listening, we're all so different. Our kids are different. Our spouses and partners are different. Our friendships are different. So there's no like one solution for each of these feelings, or I think it's just us all having these dialogues and bouncing ideas off of each other. And maybe, like Amy Poehler says, good for her, not for me. Maybe there's those moments where you're like, yeah, that really doesn't resonate with me. But maybe talking to someone else, you're like, yeah, you'll know when it kind of clicks, like maybe I'll try that, or, and just continue that ripple. Like I keep saying, the ripple effect.
Everything you said rings so true to me. I feel like when reading a bunch of those self-help books and mom books, as you call them, you do get very overwhelmed when your brain is already at full capacity. Somehow, even if you're sitting on the couch of boredom as a mom, sometimes it is at full capacity and you just can't handle that. And I love that you just mentioned how important dialogue is, just being vulnerable and opening up. So since you have done so much research though, and read so many things, for you personally, what's been the best bit of parenting advice that you've received, either reading or just from somebody else?
All right. So this isn't parenting advice. Ironically, this is actually from a woman who doesn't even have a child, but I've carried it through since 2016. And saw her with her book launch, met her last year at her book launch, sat in the front row, raised my hand and brought up this topic to her, and she has never turned me off because she doesn't have children by choice. And I'm a personal development junkie. I'm always looking at ways to just learn and just become a better person in any way I can, or whatever I can do. So Marie Forleo, I don't know if you're familiar with Marie Forleo.
No, I'm not.
Okay, so she is amazing. I've used her for business wise, she has a great following, great videos out there. She's got a course that she has. So originally I started following her and reading, her blog and all these things that she was doing out there, because of the business I was creating with health coaching. But I noticed that she weaved a lot of personal stuff throughout it. Because when you do run your own business or whatever you're doing, if you're working for someone else, your personal life does have an effect on that completely. So I just loved opening her emails. I loved her videos she would send every Tuesday. I loved listening to her speak. I loved, when she'd be on a podcast. And Super Soul Sunday, she was on and spoke. So Oprah, she's authentic with Oprah. But her subject for her Super Soul Sunday talk was the concept that she has coined, everything is figure-outable. So that's the title of her book that came out last year. And she was in 25 minutes from me. I got tickets for her book launch. My friends and I went. I sat first row and it was amazing. She's so authentic, real, raw. Like, when you just get that good feeling from someone and you're just like, wow, Jersey girl, like, so like, and so this everything is figure-outable. I asked her, when I raised my hand, I was like, please call on me, with all these like thousands of women in the audience. Like, please call on me. And so they did. And I went up to the mic and I was, I was shaking, like my knees were rattling because I'm like, I cannot believe I'm like 10 feet from her. And so the concept of everything is figure-outable, everyone throughout the talk was talking a lot of business stuff. And I went up there and I said, how do you explain this concept when raising your child? And I said to her, I acknowledge, I'm like, I know, Marie, that you don't have, children, but I think that you would have such great wisdom about this concept when it comes to parenting. And she was very open, like super like grateful that I asked that. And she's like, I love that you asked this. And I brought up my daughter, and I have brought this concept into raising her. And so when you initially hear everything is figure outable, you think, really? Like everything is figure outable. So of course there was a man in the one man in the audience, and he's like, all right, well, what if you have cancer? Like, how do you figure that out? And like Marie takes the mic, and she puts this, like, she writes about it in the book too, a lot, about how it may not be the answer or the solution that you anticipated or hoped for or planned for, but you'll find a way to get through something. So like for me with my daughter, when I raise her, and whatever challenge comes her way, and I've been doing this since 2016 when I heard her speech, is looking in her eyes when there's a solution. And I look at Brooklyn and I say, Brooklyn, everything is figure outable. And this calmness comes on her, and she now knows what it means. Initially, I had to explain. I say, maybe, we don't have, maybe you can't do X, Y, and Z, but let's use our brains and figure out other ways to get to your happiness. So it's, with the cancer thing, I'm like, oh my gosh, how's she going to answer this one? And she said, obviously that's a tragedy, but how do you then live your life even better than you would have if you weren't diagnosed, until that day comes when you're not when you're not on this earth? That figure outable, like, I'm going to figure out how to live my best life. And up until the day, I mean, who knows if you're diagnosed with anything, if it could be 4 years, 6 years, you don't know anymore nowadays. Right. So with children, to allow them to kind of come up with, and this is obviously when they get older, like that toddler phase, they aren't going to get that. This is more, 4 years and beyond. But like, I love carrying that through with my daughter. I know it's going to carry through the rest of elementary, middle school, high school. And she's going to have that voice in her head in college when she's off on her own, and she is with a challenge, and she can figure it out on her own, and have confidence that even if she makes a mistake, that she can pivot and everything's still figure outable, and find another way to get to, her happiness.
Oh my gosh. I absolutely love that. What's her name again?
Okay. Marie Forleo, Forleo. She is amazing, and she has the best hair on the planet. So that's all I'll say. But I think even if you don't, like, I have friends that don't have children, and I love when someone from the outside brings a perspective outside of the motherhood world. Oh, yeah. So I think that's why I also love personal development books, because there are a lot of authors I've read and followed and podcasts I've listened to that don't have children because they're building like multi-million-dollar businesses and don't, either don't have time or whatever. And I respect that. Hallelujah. Right. But there's so many things I listen to that I carry into motherhood that have nothing to do with parenthood. It's just with life and how you can bring these life lessons in. And you can also bring things to a level that your toddler may understand, and then carry it through in other ways as they grow.
And I love that, because I feel like that can even be brought back to the friendship thing, where maybe you don't necessarily have to just seek out fellow mom friends, maybe the person that you need to be talking to is somebody else. You just have to figure that out. But I think that is awesome advice, that everyone can have great advice when it comes to just, improving yourself and et cetera. It doesn't matter if they have children or not, you can implement it into parenting. So for the new moms just listening to you, I have this question for you. In your own life, When was it with your daughter that you're like, whoa, I made it through that beginning stage? You know what I'm saying? Did you have a moment like that where you're like, whoa, okay, I did that? Or are you still in the thick of it when she's 8 years old right now?
I would say my past, the biggest challenge I went through, and I know this is probably cliche, everyone will like nod their heads, but I had a really hard time with breastfeeding. Um, Loneliness and breastfeeding don't mix well together either. So I was overproducing and didn't know it. So it was the latch and the off and on screaming. And I thought, I didn't know what she was doing. And I'm on Google, like frantically, like, why won't she latch? And why does she come off of me every 5 seconds? And so anyways, the tears I had, the tears she had, I didn't talk to my mom about it. I don't know why. It's like, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out on my own. And this was before everything is figured. This was 2013. So it was before everything is figure outable even came into my life. I should have probably woven that in back then. But I remember going to the pediatrician, and gosh, I was so thankful. His nurse practitioner was a lactation consultant. So when I was honest with her at her next appointment, finally, I was like, I got to talk to someone about this. I'm not getting anywhere on the internet. She figured it out, and that it was overproduction, and gave me some tips, but she looked at me and grabbed my hand and she's like, I want you to go to this, and she gave me a card, this breastfeeding support group at this local hospital by me. And I looked at her and I said, well, that's not where I delivered. And she's like, they don't care. Like, go. You need to go. It's every Monday, 10 to 10:30. I still remember that. Gosh, 8 years ago, right? And I, for some reason, was like, yeah, I need to go. She goes, Michelle, if anything, get out of the house, talk to other mothers. There's a nurse that runs it. She can help you, but go. Make it part of your calendar. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, so I went, and like I was talking about before with those instant and not so much connections with people, there'd be a room of 15, there'd be different people sometimes every week, but some consistent people. And there were some people where I'd sit there in my head, I'm like, oh, like, I'm just not, and it wasn't judgment. It was just like, oh, can I please connect with someone? Like, what is it, me? Like, and then there was this, I say woman, but it makes her sound so old. It's like, I want to say girl, but woman across from me. And the moment she started telling her story, we were going like a round table. It was that, yeah, she's my people. Like instant connection. And to this day, we call each other like best friends. And we are still our daughters. So they met at the boob, we said, like, and we joked, Brooklyn and DC met at the boob. And like, they look at us now like that they're 8. They're like, what? And these girls from infancy, they went to Montessori when they were toddlers up to kindergarten. They unfortunately don't go to the same school now, but that's okay. But we all were still like super close. Like, she's still my best friend. And if I didn't take a chance and like get out of the thick of, I remember like times just looking out, and I'm looking out at it right now. I'm having kind of like that trigger feeling, the snowstorms that were going on during the time that Brooklyn was born, which we're having a lot of snow lately in the Midwest, and looking out at like, and it's 2 or 3 in the morning thinking like, what did I do? Is this ever going to end or get better? And I was by myself with these feelings. And until I took a chance and went to that support group and met my person, it's like, I don't know what would have happened. I'm so grateful that nurse practitioner, and then I had the bravery to go, that I just didn't put the card to the side and say, I'll figure it out. Because even though with the everything is figure outable that I just talked about, like you were saying earlier, it's okay to get help from others around you. You don't have to do this all by yourself. At times you can, but I love to have my, people resources, even if it's a book, a webinar, a seminar, anything around me, a friend. I think we need all the help we can get. But if you're going to ask me about the present, it's homeschooling through a pandemic. So since last March, yes, and trying to write a book and work part-time, it's like you just sometimes there's just time periods in your life where you got to let some things rest and focus. And I've really enjoyed, actually, I'm joking, but I have enjoyed my homeschooling with Brooklyn, and I'm blessed that I can put some things to the side until she goes back in the fall, which she is. And
hallelujah.
Yes, but I've had the blessing of seeing how she learns, where we've chosen a school based on that. And we've gotten so close. It's going to be hard when she goes to school. It's going to be good for the both of us, but we're together all day, except when we're sleeping. No, I do get my little breaks here and there, but it's hard when there's a pandemic. Like nothing's open. So, go on a walk, whatever.
You're like, I can't entertain you all day. I'm sorry. You went back to the new motherhood phase when she came back in your home, where you have to entertain all day long.
Yeah. And it's just her. So I don't have like a sibling, but even if you have a sibling, it's not a guarantee they're going to get along and want to play together all the time. So, I think as a mom, you're just on, in these situations.
Yes, I think a lot of moms are going through that right now with the pandemic with their older kids as well. So, Michelle, what would be your number one takeaway for moms? If you had to pick one thing that you want them to remember and take away from this, what would it be?
I would say find the bravery inside to be authentic, to honor your true self, your feelings, and to find resources to allow you to release these things, to find that confidence so you can find your unique motherhood. It's not always going to be happiness, and that's life in general. Our struggles, like I said, make us stronger. But I think not pretending that you're okay. You have the permission to be imperfect. You have the permission to be honest and vulnerable. And I think, you just need to find moms out there just need to find people they're comfortable with to do that in order to grow in that way. And I would love to be that for people. As I've found great comfort in strangers at times, more so than people that are so close to me. Hence my husband, when he found out about all this in the book, this was like 2 or 3 years ago when I started writing it. And my brother is a writer. He has books out. And he's, he and I have connected on, that on the side, and we have conversations. He's like, so how, it's like Easter Sunday. He's like, how's the book going? And my husband's like, oh, you're writing a book? And I'm like, cutting my meat. I'm like, yeah. And my brother's like, I didn't know that you were like, went through all that stuff as a mom and all those feelings. And did you have postpartum depression? And I'm like, like you hear silverware clinking. And it's like, and I looked at him, I'm like, I'll talk to you about it later. And then my mom's across, she's like, I didn't know any of this either. You never told me. And I'm like, oh, happy Easter, everyone. So
you're banking on them not reading your book.
Yeah. But sometimes you don't tell people that for the simple fact that you don't want your problem to be solved. And sometimes the ones that love you the most want to help and solve your problem. And my husband's a problem solver. And I know that. And I love him for that. But I knew he'd be like, well, what could I do? Or what did I do? Or like he would take some responsibility for it when it has nothing actually to do with him. He's amazing. So it's like, I didn't want that. Or my mom to be like, what did I do as a mother that you feel this way? She's not Jewish, by the way.
I was going to say,
I am a converted Jew, but my mom is Catholic. So, yeah, I'm channeling my inner, Bubby here. We have guilt in our parents have, whatever religion you are, there's guilt everywhere. What
totally.
Did I do?
I love that. Oh my God.
Like nothing. You did nothing.
It has nothing to do with you.
Yes.
In fact, this is super normal.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I love it so much. Michelle, you are fantastic. Michelle Mansfield, author, health coach, and mom. Thank you so, so much for joining us today. That was so incredible.
Well, I am honored. Have an awesome, awesome day, moms. Enjoy this summit. And I just appreciate being here. What a gift.
All right. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Hello, my name is Rich Christensen, and through the years of entrepreneurship and growing crazy businesses, I lost a view of what was really important. Through a series of really tender experiences, my mentor taught me you can replace anything in this world, but you cannot replace your family. So I made a dramatic pivot and started embedding deeply in my family some of the same principles that applied to business. My wife and I began very deliberately parenting. We looked for models, how not to mess our children up. There were really no good models to teach values, to entrench family unity, and to make sure that the values passed on in legacy to my children, and more importantly, my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So like every great entrepreneur, I secretly created my own models. I was very hesitant to talk about it, but a few of my closest friends saw the impact that this was having on my children. I decided to take the processes that I used and create an online course so others could also work with their families to create tighter bonds, build confidence and self-esteem, while constructing a gorgeous legacy that they could live on past our lifetime. With this 5-part digital training series, you'll find the single most important lessons of thought leadership that I've ever created. There's 5 critical parts to this series, each with its very unique function. The first is symbols, creating unifying symbols that we all can touch to. Second is the doctrine, the guiding principles that we can tag and understand what the rules are. The third is the traditions or the rituals, where we actually formalize and we unite and show that we're unified with the values. The fourth, my favorite, the defining life events. The final section of this is the structure. What do the really wealthy families do to preserve their wealth and to pass on in the form of family banking? To pass on how you appropriately set up the will and how you embed your family constitution so that these values permeate and pass on. I can tell you firsthand that taking these steps to create a beautiful life for my family is the most important work that I've ever done and also the most rewarding. I would invite you to learn some of these principles, unify your family, bond them, and take some of the guesswork out of this. And I'm going to provide you the framework to make that happen with this 30 years of life experiences. So join me, get your membership to build family legacies today.